Hello.
Welcome back.
It is great to be back.
Well, almost back.
I am back physically. I am slowly coming back to all things work.
Well, it is good to have you back and see your face again.
It is good to see you as well. As always, it's different coming back. New perspectives.
I bet. Well, I mean, you've been away for a while, and I've known you for 20 plus years, and you have a tendency to do big things. You have the go big attitude, but I think rowing 1,700 miles in how many days? 39 days? 38?
38 days. Yeah.
38 days on the Pacific Ocean in a 23-foot rowboat is not what most people would do.
Yeah, that's true. And I'll say on one hand, it was certainly more challenging, taxing, a bigger, well, I do like to go big. It was bigger than big. All things considered, though, I would say just life changing and enlightening, refreshing, recharging in lots of ways. So I'm thrilled I did it and had the opportunity to do it thanks to people like you who supported me.
Oh, well, of course. And I know there was about 300 other people out there supporting you and probably way more than that. So, but I guess before we jump into a couple of the questions that I have on mental health, because we're doing this to celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month. And I think next month actually is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's perfect considering some of the causes you're raising for. But just maybe you can talk a little bit about why did you decide to do this in the first place and why now?
Yeah, I've mentioned this before to a few people, but I'm a bit of a long-term planner. When I turned 50, I made a couple of life kind of goals and theme goals for myself. And I had this intersection this past a couple of years ago where I felt there was an opportunity to do something for myself, but also for a cause or a series or a set of causes that were pretty meaningful. I was kind of coming out of a period where I'd lost my mom. The business was at a certain point where I knew I could actually take a little bit of time. My son William was just entering recovery after a long battle with substance abuse and addiction and some mental health challenges, and so things were converging for me. And so the why now was, I'd say, a series of personal and professional convergence points. And I frankly think that at this stage of my life, a reset, reflect, recharge moment was due.
That's great. Well, and you're raising money for a couple specific causes. Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about those two causes and why they're special for you.
Yeah, I do think that young men and this intersection of mental health and addiction, like there is a tsunami, I think, actually happening right now where that is only becoming a bigger challenge, more of a challenge uh, because of social media, gaming, gambling, a lot of isolation that's happening. And so to shine a light on that conversation was important to me. My son is, again, has kind of come out the other side, but it's also affected three generations in my family: my dad, my brothers, my nephew, myself in some ways, my son. And so while I was in this recharge reset framework myself, I could shine a light, have a discussion on this or with others on this, create a community around it. And I think we were able to do that as part of the row. And while it's a tough topic to talk about, especially for men, I've always prided myself on being the provider, the strong one, positive attitude, optimist. Being vulnerable, I think, has been one of the biggest gifts of this row. The feedback, the openness that I think, been able to receive back has been pretty cool. And I do think rewarding too.
That's great. Is there anything else that this row taught you about mental health?
I mean, I will say for me, this concept of noise is really resonates with me now. And when I say noise, there's a lot of noise in our lives today. And noise can be, I just left a breakfast at a nice resort, and I counted 10 other tables with couples and families at those tables. Every single table had one to every guest on their phones.
Hmm.
And just watching that, and I've noticed it because when you're on the ocean, it's very quiet. All you have is nature. And you have this ability to be very clear minded and take time to reflect. And so I don't know. I think that this, again, that the mental health related challenges oftentimes are because there's just so much noise whether it's information or misinformation or the combination thereof. And this constant bombardment by digital
Mm.
is a tough thing, especially for the younger generation that knows nothing else. This is all they've seen. They don't know what it's like to be in nature uninterrupted. And so I think that this notion of noise is something to explore further, or isolating yourself so you don't have that noise.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, I mean, one of the takeaways that you've talked about in some of your writings is this concept around human drift. Maybe talk a little bit about that and specifically how that kind of relates to the age of AI that we're in.
Yeah.
And I'll just add a second part of that question, which is not many people can go self-isolate on an ocean for as long as you are. Like any advice for those people who can't do that, how they could kind of get away from the noise, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, I would start with the last thing I am proposing that people do is row an ocean for 38 days by yourself. Like,
Good, because
it
I'm not
was
doing
it,
it.
it was certainly high risk. It's definitely on the extreme side. Now, having said that, could you spend not 38 days, but I'll call it 3 to 4 hours hiking in the woods or without your electronics? When you go on a hike, even if it's for an hour through Central Park, maybe leave your phone behind. I think there are things that you can do to isolate the noise and be disconnected, authentically disconnected and present, either by yourself or with others, that are really, really important to mental health and reflection and connection. Because ultimately, the opposite of addiction is connection. And connection isn't always, let's go on Facebook or Instagram and connect with others. So I think isolation doesn't have to be 38 days. It can be 3 to 4 hours. It can be 30 to 40 minutes. But I think being conscious and present at a dinner table, at a breakfast, at a lunch, in the park, on a walk is really, really important. And so I think that that's the advice I would give from as I kind of step away from this one.
That's great advice. Well, I've told my
And
children that.
yeah, yeah, and I would like back on the drift comment. I think because everything right now in the age of AI, if you do your whether it's on LinkedIn or Substack or whatever your news feed is, it's all about this level of automation and efficiency and human cognition moving towards AI. That drift is kind of pulling us away from connection.
Mm,
And I just think we need to be aware. Like, and I said this in a post that I made. Drift on the ocean is really important to understand because at night, if you do sleep, you are drifting, and drifting can be favorable. It can be positive, and there are things about AI that are also positive. But you could drift in the wrong direction, and I think trying to adapt to that, consider that, be aware of that is important in life as well.
mm.
And so it's not, this is not like an, if you drift, it's not an anti AI or anti tech message. It's an awareness, consideration message. And that awareness is there's another side of this too. Not everything has to be better, faster, more efficient, more AI. Like, gosh, just sit down and get to know somebody and ask them again, how are you doing authentically?
That's great advice. Well, I guess, I mean, you talked a little bit about drift and that could be dangerous. What's one of the scariest things that happened on your trip that you
Yeah.
can that you want to talk about, I guess?
Yeah, there were two moments in particular. There's one that was drift related. It was day 30/31. It was the bottom of Cabo, about 70 miles south of Cabo. As I was starting to head, I needed to head east. I drifted 6 miles southwest in very open ocean, very far away from any type of rescue boat. And I was genuinely very, very scared. I was not going to be able to make the turn from west to east.
Mm,
And I remember waking up that morning petrified that the conditions were such that it was going to be impossible and I was going to have to call in for help. And it came on the heels of a day where I got battered around in a big way. So my confidence was low, my
mm.
sleep debt was high. I was going in the wrong direction. And so that was probably ultimately the scariest. Like there was a combination of factors in, frankly, in my mental health because I was 30 plus days in. I was very thin overall.
Mm.
And literally and figuratively, I was drifting the wrong way.
Wow. What made you decide not to pull the lifeline?
It would have taken a lot for me to pull the lifeline. I started making progress. I chipped away that day. So while I was going, and you can see it on the map in detail, like I was literally going 6 miles in southwest, and I needed to head due east. But I woke up, I came out of the cabin that morning, I got on the deck, and I slowly started making progress. And I just chipped away, and I rode 12 hours that day, which I row every day. And I made progress, nothing like I had made in the past. I mean, typically I was making 40 to 60 miles of progress a day. I think I made 12 miles of progress that day. So a fraction of a typical day, but it was progress. And so I wasn't going to be calling in for help. That was something that was not on my list, broadly speaking.
Well, this brings up another interesting point, and you've talked a little bit about this, that a lot of men are taught to, I mean, women and men are, but especially men, I think, are taught to kind of push through pain, push through struggle, like don't cry about it, don't ask for help, try to figure it out on your own, whether that's explicitly or by watching their fathers go through it or people in their lives. I guess, how is your definition of strength changed through this row, and any advice that you'd give to men who are struggling with that?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the combination of, I think, what I went through with Will, my son, and the row, in that you can't go through these types of things on your own. You need help. And even as a solo rower, I had a team that supported me, that was behind me. And it was a team, they were dedicated people like Tez and my doctor and trainers. There were my family members that were helping me both emotionally, frankly, spiritually, and guiding me on the route. But in life with William, I couldn't solve his problems. I needed to connect him with a series of professionals, and ultimately Providence Farm, a sober living community that ended up kind of guiding him in the right direction that he now works for. But it takes multiple people, and you're not, as a father, always the person, despite you thinking you can solve all the problems, you may not be that person. And so sometimes it's just connecting with the right people and having that community of support. And it's the same community of support I also had on the road. Like the amount of emotional support that I got that fed back into me was fuel, just like the fuel I needed, which would be water and food. But that emotion, like that was very powerful. And I think that's the same when it relates to men. Yeah, guess what? You need help. You can't solve all this. This is stuff that is potentially beyond you. And a lot of fathers, you wouldn't have listened to your father.
Maybe not.
You were smarter than your dad. And guess what? Your son doesn't want to listen to you either. And so put them in touch with the right person. That's, I think, the prideful thing to do, connecting with others.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got be present, try to minimize the noise, be careful of the drift, and ask for help.
Connection, authentic connection, and asking for help. Correct.
Oh, that's great. Well, I guess one question, and obviously this is going to be on a business post for Tercera. Let me just ask about CEOs. CEOs have a lonely job sometime. It's it's a tough job. I mean, you've been through it yourself. And any advice that you'd give them, either taking care of their own mental health that's different from what we just talked about, or how they think about it for their own companies?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I talked to a lot of our CEOs about it and talked to other CEOs. I'd say there's two things. One, I think there's basics that everyone needs to follow around sleep and diet and fitness. Like there's a baseline things that you have to do to, I think, have a foundation for physical and mental health. So I think making sure that those are in check and that you're not always burning the candle on both ends, this hustle culture, this 996 culture, work 9 to 9, 6 days a week, like that is not sustainable. So I think I like to start there. Secondly, it's easy to say, let's get an executive coach. It's not as easy to say, what about a therapist? I think they're a trainer for your brain that you can trust and be open and candid and honest with, I think is very powerful. And I think a lot of CEOs maybe are too prideful for that. And it's easy to have that executive coach and a mentor. I think many people, starting in some cases with a therapist that you can trust and talk about maybe your life and your, more inside challenges, because these are all connected. Your work and your life and your family and your kids, they're all interconnected. I mean, ultimately, you're working to have a better life for your family and for your kids, even if you don't have kids. So I think that's another piece of advice. But I think the basics, kind of sleep and diet and health, like there's a real foundation. and then a trainer for your brain. And that can be a therapist, not
Mm.
just an executive coach.
That's great. I love that. Well, you've raised more than $500,000 for these two organizations that you've mentioned, Providence Farm and Project Healthy Minds. Can people still donate, and how do they donate?
Yes, they can. These are two great organizations at the, again, intersection of mental health and addiction, substance abuse. You can still donate, cbrose.com. We hope over time to raise 750K ideally, so another couple hundred thousand. And yeah, I'm hoping to do a series of talks and dinners and roundtables with folks. And so, yeah, would love the opportunity to share more of the learnings, the lessons, but certainly ability to donate at CB Rose is still there and appreciated.
Great. Well, welcome back. Enjoy a beautiful, relaxing setting, and we can't
Thank
wait
you.
until you're officially back.
It's coming. Thank you.
Take care.
All right, bye.